Welcome. Sorry for the delay. I know. I'm a bit late, but better late than never, as the saying goes. I apologize. I had some technical difficulties getting the stream up and going. One of those was accidentally unplugging the power to my computer. So, yeah, that was one of the technical difficulties. So, we're up and running now. So anyways, welcome to the Null News. Sorry, I'm a little late again. I accidentally unplugged my computer. That's that is what it is. Now, thankfully, my web browser saved everything how it was. It actually, which is nice. For some reason, my main camera wasn't getting recognized by the computer. I was almost afraid that the capture card had died in that, but I got it working by unplugging and replugging. Moral of the story: that's how you get most things to start working again. All right. So we have a lot to cover in news. There's a lot of interesting things, a lot of little things, nothing major. I would have done an emergency session like we've been doing if there was a major thing, but there wasn't. There was just a bunch of little things. So we'll get started with security right off the top. Remember, in any of these sections, if you have a thing that you'd like to have discussed, a piece of news, please feel free to bring community news, put it in Discord, or leave it in chat if you forget to let me know ahead of time. All right, so let's start with security. There's only 3 things in security. We'll talk to them. We'll talk about them pretty quickly. So the first one is Ubuntu's command not found tool could trick users into installing rogue packages. So the command not found is basically a package on Ubuntu that when you type a command and it's not found, it recommends one that you can install via app that's either close or the same thing. And what is done here is that you can basically suggest your own package in that tool. So basically, there's an exploit for the tool that allows them to recommend their own package, and if you just blindly install whatever app is telling you to, or whatever the command line tool is telling you, that could be a big problem. So the vulnerability isn't in the tool itself or in apt. It's not in apt as far as like making you install things that you didn't think you were installing, but it can recommend you to install something via apt that you're not wanting to. So, and they gave an example here. So anyways, this is just something to be cognizant of. Yeah, it's interesting. All right. Tech companies assign a cord to combat AI-generated election trickery. You know, I don't know what this will mean. I'm interested and terrified to see in the coming elections. Fake news and misleading news has been around, and propaganda has been around for a long time. The really interesting thing is the ability to do deep fakes and things like that. Even if you can combat that and say, no, that's a deep fake, does everybody watch, you know, how many people were tricked by the deep fake? Even if we can, I suppose it's not an actual deep fake if it's detectable, but the point still stands. What will the impact be? Do we even have the ability to measure the impact? That's something I don't think that we even have the ability to do. So I'll be interested in watching this. Maybe horrified, but interested in watching this as well. All right, sorry, each page has to load. Usually I preload all these, but again, we're just coming fresh off of a new boot, so each page was going to have to lose. The U.S. offers $10 million for information on Black Cat ransomware leaders. So if you know anything about the leaders of the Black Cat ransomware group, that money could be yours. $10 million. Go for it. And that was it for security. Really, honestly, there wasn't a ton in security that I saw this week. There was a lot of stuff around AI, which we're actually going to jump into AI next because that's a pressing topic. There was several things like the tech companies assigning the Accord to combat, which got put into security. But there's actually quite a few things around AI that I saw this week that I think is interesting to talk about, discuss, and whatnot. I'm going to go with the most clickbait of them all, something that we can all probably all saw at least referenced. Sorry, I'm actually preloading all these pages for you guys like a professional. The one that we probably all know about before now, but I didn't feel was pressing, was the release of OpenAI's Sora. Now, this is not in public preview, and as I discontinued my monthly payment to them because I haven't found ChatGPT to be that useful in my day-to-day work, I don't have access to it. But some of the examples that they showed have looked pretty impressive, from this woman walking downtown in Times Square, even though some of the stuff obviously doesn't. If you look through these, the paper airplanes fly through the leaves, but it's still pretty impressive nonetheless. Now, I have played around with a few tools that have done AI generated video, and this is probably by far the one that I've seen that has done the best. Now, when I have used these, I have actually tried to generate stuff that would be useful for my videos, which it's never worked out. The explainer type of videos have never worked out well for these. But this is like video game graphics. It looks like a video game, just how it moves. It doesn't look real, but it looks pretty awesome. It looks like AAA title video game graphics, for sure. So anyways, yeah, pretty cool. That's pretty fantastic, actually. Besides the shadow, it looks real. That's pretty fantastic. Anyways, so we'll see how well this, what goes on, what is done with this in the future. Yeah. But let's move on to other more interesting AI news that I think you all might or should be watching. The first one is this: UPS lays off 12,000 managers as AI replaces jobs. Now, this is a little misleading itself. It says as AI misplaced, and I looked through a lot of them, and a lot of, I picked this one, but a lot of them that reported on this put it towards AI replacing the jobs. Now, that is not necessarily true if you actually read UPS's layoff notice. UPS said that it's laying off the managers because of a decrease in demand, and that it planned on not hiring them again by leveraging AI as demand picks back up. Their hope is that they can leverage AI to not rehire these managers by making the managers that they're keeping, which they had something like 85,000 managers, making those more efficient. So of the 70,000 managers that they have left, 73,000 managers that they have left, making those 73,000 more efficient in the coming years. So these titles were a little misleading as I looked into it. It's not AI replace the jobs. They're actually doing layoffs, and they're planning on trying to make their managers more efficient with AI to hopefully not rehire them. Now, the other thing that comes on, that's a good enough plan. Will it work? You have to see this in a year, in 2 years, on whether this even works for their goals. Now, we've seen a lot of jobs try to flatten out, or a lot of companies try to flatten out, including ones like Facebook, who has let go many managers as they try to be more efficient. So again, of 85,000 managers, again, we'll see if it works. And this is probably a good thing anyways. A lot of companies get too many managers, and flattening out actually forces them to rethink their process, because a lot of times they have so much process, they actually need those managers, and it makes them rethink it. And so I think it's good. But again, these headlines have been super misleading in my opinion. If you actually go through UPS's official statement. All right. Yeah. Okay, so that was... The next things are kind of interesting, and I'd like to talk about them a little bit. Hello, Russell. How are you doing? So the first one is Kong. They make the Kong service mesh. They have some open source projects that you can leverage. Interesting company. Yeah. But they released an AI gateway that makes building multi-LLM apps easier. So multi-LLM is basically when you try to combine one or two or more LLMs together. And basically they added the ability to do this in the Kong gateway, in their API gateway, to actually make it better. Now, I haven't actually tried to do this, and this is something that's on our 2024 roadmap, is to do more with AI ourselves. And so this might be something that we have to deal with later this year. I don't know. $10 or less direct reports, or you aren't managing, just box ticking. Actually, so that's a really interesting thing. If you have more than 10 reports, it looks good on a resume, and it looks good for getting promoted. But it's actually super impractical. Super impossible to be a good manager. So that's actually a really good take, Russell. From somebody who has obviously had to deal with this. All right. Lag Llama. So I saw this article, which actually got me reading the white paper about Lag Llama, is something I'm actually pretty interested in because it's a foundational model for time series forecasting. I have repeatedly said that I think the super awesomeness about AI isn't trying to make it do fuzzy predictions. It's about actually, I mean, all of it is prediction. Now, we can make it do fuzzy stuff and make it lie to us, because that's what ChatGPT does, is it makes fuzzy predictions. Or we could actually start to leverage these types of things for doing actual real predictions. So there's this article, but that got me reading into the actual article that was released, the actual paper. And I'm actually really excited about this, as this looks like something that a lot of people could actually leverage in production for time series forecasting. Time series forecasting has a lot of really applicable uses for businesses, and I think actually making this easier to do is going to be a big deal. So I'm excited about this. And I think that these are some of the little things that you'll miss because of Sora. You know, people all were talking about Sora, but nobody talked about Lag Llama. Lag Llama is something that people are going to be able to leverage in their business today. Not everybody needs to generate AI video. Even if you do, it's a much smaller group of people than who are going to be able to leverage time series forecasting. So, I'm going to leave a link to this in. There you go. I think I'm pretty excited about this. All right. So the last thing that we have to talk about in AI that I think could affect you all is not what I just did. What did I just do? Okay. All right. Sorry. I just accidentally. The last thing here is base TTS lessons from building a billion parameter text-to-speech model on 100,000 hours of data. Now, this has not been reviewed yet. I want to make that clear because I reviewed it myself, and I'm not a PhD person, but I think that there's a little bit of it will probably get peer reviewed and probably pass, and that's fine. I think there's a little bit of conjecture that goes in on this, which is not entirely out of the norm for these papers. But what they try to do here is say that this language model that they built over 100 hours of data has emergent abilities that wasn't actually in the training data set. There's a couple problems that they don't address, in my opinion, on this. One is that you have to say that it's for sure not in the data set, which if you have 100,000 hours means you didn't actually review everything in it, and you're assuming that the tags are correct, which we also have many white papers out there saying that the tag data sets are like 85% accurate at best. That's like some of the good ones. So it's hard to impossible to say that 100,000 hours of data is actually that this wasn't actually in the data set. The other problem is they go on to claim about emergent abilities, but all the abilities were actually in line with a text to speech thing. It didn't develop the ability to go to text to video. It was only speech things that weren't directly trained. So again, emergent abilities, I a little bit of disagree with it, but I think it's a fascinating paper. I think it's a fairly interesting deep dive into what emergence abilities means, and it made me even think a little. So I liked it as a paper. This is not me hating on the work that they've done. It's me bringing it up to you, giving you a brief opinion on it. Would love to talk to you guys more about some of these things. These are the things I read. So yeah, that was it all on AI this week. Did you guys see anything else? It seems like we're all getting new keyboards and switching to Colmac together. Dutch, we already covered Sora? Absolutely. Air Canada? Oh, no, this was pretty good. No. This was actually pretty good. I meant to have it. Okay, so here's one thing, but I'll just talk a little bit about it really quickly. Air Canada has to honor a refund policy its chatbot made up. So this was a ruling in Canada, I believe, that basically they had an AI chatbot that made up a refund policy and told everybody that was their refund policy. And Canada basically said, that's what your website said, that's what your chatbot said, that you have to honor it. Now, I obviously didn't dig into that today. I did have it on my list. I don't know what happened. And unless I tried to do a little bit of background, so I can't tell you more than that, because usually I dig a little bit into it, like I do with the white papers, as well as Lag Llama and UPS, where I actually dig into the article and dig into what UPS actually said to tell you, the best that I can. I am dropping some frames right now. Sorry about that. But yes, they did lose that lawsuit and have to honor that refund policy. Hello, YouTube. How are you doing? All right, so we're doing the news like we do every Sunday. We've covered AI, we've covered security. Do you guys see anything else? Thank you for bringing up that Air Canada story. That was actually really important. It's actually really important for developers because if this is going to be the legal precedent set forward, it makes you rethink AI chatbots for marketing and so forth. If that's going to be the legal precedence, if your AI hallucinates something that you're going to be held to it, then that's actually a really big deal. I actually don't think people are... I'm super glad that you brought that up because this is what I was thinking when we saw that, was that this sets a massive precedence for what it means to use an AI chatbot. Hello, YouTube. It's good to see you guys. It's good to see you all here. So again, for those of you that missed it, Air Canada has to honor a refund policy that its AI chatbot made up. It just made it up. It wasn't actually an official one, and they lost the lawsuit. So, all right. So we're going to jump into cloud news, unless somebody else has something for AI news. Everybody's more than welcome to bring up articles, especially if you think that I'm going to miss them. If they're offside the current topic that we're talking, we'll cover them at the end, and that's fine. So we're going to talk about cloud news. We're going to actually start a little bit different. Instead of talking about the big cloud providers, we're going to talk about some open source cloud news. About some things that are coming out and some things that I'm actually pretty excited about. It's been a little while since I've covered Kubernetes stuff because I haven't been excited about things that are released in Kubernetes, but there's two big things that I have been following that I am actually pretty excited about. Now, before you guys correct me on the pronunciation of this, I know that I'm probably mispronouncing it. I get it. Please let me know how to properly pronounce it. All right. So that being said, Strimzi, at least that's how I pronounce it, has been inaugurated into the CNCF. So you can find a couple articles on the announcement of the Strimzi into the Kubernetes ecosystem. You can find it here, where you can see that it is a CNCF project and they're in incubation mode. And I'm actually pretty excited about this because you guys know that I like event-based architectures, especially when you're talking about large architecture. Event-based makes a ton of sense and is easy to reason about and theorize about. It also makes complicated architectures a little bit simpler. I like them. That being said, they can be difficult to maintain with Kafka and whatnot. And here is Kafka on Kubernetes in a few minutes. This is basically a custom operator for Kubernetes to make running Kafka on it easier. Now, there's other projects like nats.io, which I think is a pretty fantastic product, but it's not Kafka. And Kafka is kind of the de facto event-based thing. So, that being said, this is out. I'm kind of excited about it. And I don't know. Do you guys use Kafka? Let me know. Let me know in the comments. If you use Kafka and Kubernetes, maybe it's something you should be interested in checking out. Now, it's important to note is the right words to use there, that it's only version 0.39. While it's in incubating mode, it hasn't been released their first major version, so it might not be something that you want to use in production right away, but it's something that is out there. So it has some configuration that's like pretty awesome, like from the built-in security by default to the ability for rack awareness for HA. So if you're running Kubernetes on bare metal and you have it set up for rack awareness, you can actually pass this on to your Kafka cluster for a highly available Kafka cluster, along down to dedicated nodes. This is generally a best practice for any database that you leverage, is a dedicated node for that thing. So while you run it in a container on Kubernetes, it gets its own node that nobody else gets to touch. And you can use taints and tolerations and stuff for that. But yeah, anyways. So yeah, I'm actually really excited about this. I'm excited about this. Dutch says all these custom operators to run a software stack that is not the actual product software seems scary to use as they can literally just vanish. I'm not quite sure I understand what you're talking about. We should talk about it. This is just an operator. It's just a product built to operate Kafka, or an open source project. So if you think a CNCF project will just vanish, I mean, CNCF projects have been sidelined. So yes, CNCF projects have been, but if it's been adopted into the CNCF as incubating, I mean, that does mean that there is a... Absolutely. Projects vanish. Kafka could eventually one day vanish. Nats.io could vanish. 100%. Kubernetes. All of these will probably vanish. Eventually. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. The next exciting thing that kind of goes hand in hand with this is the CNCF announces the graduation of cloud events. Now, what is cloud events? Cloud events is kind of, oops, I did not mean to go on. Cloud events is kind of the... Cloud events is kind of the... It's looking to be the specification for exposing, actually here, Cloud Events is a specification for exposing event metadata in a common way to provide interoperability across services, platforms, and systems. So basically, it's looking, like I said, I like event, and this is why I'm excited about both of these things, both this as well as the graduation of Cloud Events, as a way to provide events in a standard way. I think that this is actually a pretty cool project. It's kind of like Open API and those types of things, but for events. So if you don't know what it is, we can do a stream on it. I think it's pretty cool. So yeah, anyways, it's reached its graduation, which graduation means a couple of things. There's been a security review. There's been several code-based and quality reviews. There's been community-based reviews. It means more than you might think, but it also doesn't mean, it doesn't mean that everybody's using it by far. Another one to reach graduation is Cilium. So Cilium is one of the network layers that you can leverage. It made its stake on the eBPF. So like it was one of the first. Calico now uses eBPF 2, I believe. But it was one of the very first to basically make its entire network stack powered by eBPF. And it's really good. And it's fully graduated now. So I've been using it. Again, people use these things before they graduate. Graduate means it has gone through those security reviews, has gone through quality and community reviews. So it means it's pretty solid. As solid as a Go application can be, at least. All right. Moving on in the open source. This is awesome that we have so much open source cloud news to cover. I'm excited about it. Traffic Proxy v3 adds WebAssembly and Kubernetes Gateway API support. So this is a lot. I don't actually use Traffic a ton. But it's adding WebAssembly support, which I think is pretty cool. There's a lot of people that are super hyped about WebAssembly. I know I'm maybe one of the more skeptic persons about WebAssembly. I'm going to have to keep watching and waiting. I keep asking people questions to understand it better around its security context and things like that. And, I will keep you in the loop on my opinion. I'll probably have to make a video on it because I need to list out the things I don't understand a little bit better, but it is interesting and cool to see these things get support brought. I think that maybe one of the big things that people are looking for in WebAssembly that I think maybe could be interesting is like the pure serverless, like I want to run this function type of architectures. Possibly WebAssembly could possibly make those more interesting. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. Microsoft by default does use Cilium in AKS. I believe you can bring your own network if you'd like, but by default, it uses Cilium. I do know that. All right. Let's talk about the big clouds. The big clouds news. We're going to start with an unsuspecting start. Google usually is the hardest to find any information about, but they actually had some things to talk about. They actually had some things to talk about. So let's start with Google. GCP specifically. One of the more interesting things that I saw, we've been talking about AI, we've been talking about databases in our main streams, and one of the things that I've seen is introducing a vector search in BigQuery. Now, one of the things that we've been talking about in databases is that vectors almost seem more like a indexing style than they do actually a file storage on the back end. You know, when you're talking about a row-based or column-based or, you know, key value store, a lot of the times we're talking about how the data is stored on disk and not about the indexing technology. Whereas vector almost seems more like an indexing technology versus how it's stored on disk. Now, this is one of the things that we've talked about, and if you're wanting to understand vectors more, please let me know, because we are currently taking a vote in Discord about what people would like to learn about more in databases now. And so vector is one of the things that we have there. So if you want to learn more, please let me know on that subject. But if you're wanting to use vector search in BigQuery, you now can. So if you had some sort of data machine learning thing that you wanted to leverage with your data that's already in BigQuery, this just gives you another way to look at that data. And I think that's awesome. I think that this is awesome. And I don't even use BigQuery. Okay, cool. Let's go up. Coming of age in the fifth epoch of distributed computing accelerated by machine learning. I found this to be a really interesting article from Google. I want you all to read it. Or I can read it with you at the end of stream if you guys would like to go over it with me, get my thoughts on it. You let me know. I'm dropping you the link. I'm dropping you the link to it. Google released it February 15th, 2024. Done. All right, Google Cloud expands access to Gemini models for Vertex AI customers. If you've been using Vertex AIs, you can now actually pretty easily use the Gemini models inside of your inside of the API request. So you can go ahead and start using that. On top of that, if you're talking about their Gemini model, Gemini 1.5 is in active development, and they have released 1.0 Ultra. So 1.5 is looking to be basically on par with 1.0 Ultra, but be way more efficient so that hopefully that price decrease can be passed on to you. So it's important to be looking out for that because you're going to hopefully be able to save quite a bit of money leveraging this. All right, moving on to Azure. General availability of the Azure SQL updates for mid-February. Basically, you can automatically scale and grow to extreme scale with Azure SQL. Now, this wouldn't have actually made it except for the next thing that they released was the migration service in Azure Database for PostgreSQL. So they have this migration service in public preview now where you can actually migrate from Postgres to Azure Azure database for that will allow you to automatically scale to extreme scale. So if you're struggling with scale, maybe this is something interesting to you where you can leverage these 2 news articles to maybe alleviate that. Now, I'm a big fan of Postgres, so I'm not sure, but if you're in that situation where you're dealing with that, it could be something you could leverage. There's also the general availability of Azure Blob Storage cold tier support on change feed and object replication. So previously, before the general availability of it, it was in public preview, but it's now generally available for change feed and object replication. Those were the biggest things for Azure. Not super interesting, but it is what it is. AWS only had 2 things as well. We have the introducing pull request approval rules in Amazon Code Catalyst. So you basically, if you haven't used Code Catalyst, not a ton of people do, but if you do use it, you can enforce a minimum number of pull request approvals now before it can be merged into the destination branch. This is like super basic. I was actually kind of surprised. I'm actually using this news segment to call out AWS on such a basic feature. Like, I guess Code Catalyst is now usable. This is probably why not tons of people use it. Now, I have seen Code Catalyst used in automated ways before, where it's actually more of a GitOps deployment pipeline where developers don't actually leverage it, but I guess it's maybe usable now. All right. API Gateway now supports TLS 1.3. Again, I'm going to call them out a little bit on it. Does anybody have a guess of when TLS 1.3 was released? Okay, not that long ago, Russell. 1999 is a little bit long ago. Okay, not that long ago. Not that long ago. Well, TLS 1.3 has been out for over 6 years. It was released in 2017 and then approved in 2018. So it's been out for 5-6 years now. No, 6-7 years now. 6-7 years now. So it's been out for a while. I mean, it's been out for a while. TLS 1.3 has been out for a while. So the fact that API Gateway only now supports TLS 1.3 is kind of not great. Kind of not great. I'm just going to throw that out there. My name's Merrick Counts, and I'm keeping clouds on their toes. The Null Cloud will support TLS 1.3 out of the gate. Out of the gate. It will be the first one we support. First. Might be the only. All right, let's move on. Let's move on. Before I get on a do not hire list ever. Broadcom decided that in all of the turmoil it's caused so far, that it would discontinue VMware's free hypervisor ESXi. So Broadcom has continued to tear through all the goodwill that VMware ever built up and has made a great opportunity for a new for companies to wiggle their way in to where once was dominated by VMware. 1988. Yeah, 1.2 has been around for a while. So I was actually calling Azure out for a while because they actually just what? It was last month that they are deprecating 1.1 and pushing people to 1.2, which has been out for like 20 years. And I thought that was really bad, like a really slow, like nobody should be on 1.1. No one should be on 1.1. It's just not great. One 1.2, I think, is fine, probably, but I really do think that cloud providers should, especially with really, really important things like security, bring you the latest and the greatest that they can. And I'm not saying that they have to support it within 6 months of it being released, but 6 to 7 years is a little long. All right, so we have some open source news to talk about, to discuss. Actually, we have a hot topic. We have a hot topic, F5. We have a hot F5 topic. We have a hot F5 topic. We have something that's pretty cool from Sequoia, coming for open source, and I recommend people apply if they have an open source project. And yeah, let's get into it. There's a new website you should all get on board with. And that website is called Nginx. No, it's called freenginx.org. Now, this is confusing. It's basically a blank website at this point. I had to do some digging. And it turns out there's this announcing freenginx.org from Maximum Durin. And to fully understand this, you have to actually understand what happened a little bit ago with F5 Technologies. Now, F5 bought Nginx a while ago. I don't remember exactly when. Now, I want to say it was like 2018, 2019, maybe 2020. I don't remember exactly when. We did talk about it in the news section, but F5 released this CVE on Nginx. And this ruffled a lot of people's feathers. And I don't know that makes sense to non-English speaking. This made people upset. This made people very upset. And why it made people upset was because this CVE was released on a non-released branch, which is outside the normal security advisory. The most recent security advisory release, despite the fact that the particular bug was in the experimental HTTP3 code, is expected to be fixed as a normal bug as per the existing security policy. And everybody had agreed on this security policy. So now, I don't fully, I wasn't a part of this. Like I said, I'm just digging into it. So my understanding is that this wasn't a released feature, and thus there shouldn't have been a CVE. Now, why it made people as upset that there was a CVE, I am not entirely sure. Although generally unreleased code you don't release CVEs for, so that's generally a true statement as well. You know, when we write code and it's not released, we don't write CVEs for it. We just fix it if we found a problem that we think could be a security problem. So yeah. This has caused a lot of, and basically there's a fork of Nginx now. There is now a new fork of Nginx. We'll see. I'll have to keep monitoring. I'll let you guys know if Free Nginx is the place to go. I don't know at this point. I actually don't use Nginx a whole lot. Do you guys use Nginx at this point? I used to use it after F5. I haven't used it as much. I honestly haven't used it as much. Engine tofu. What a ridiculous name. What a ridiculous name. Oh my goodness. We went with Terraform to tofu. Not even like another thing that looks like, you know, like a synonym of Terraform. We went with tofu. I never understood that. I still fail to see. You know, if the goal was to get people to talk about it, they did it. They won. They got people to talk about it. Open freaking tofu. Okay. Too easy to get to rant. Let's talk about maybe one of the most exciting things. One of the most exciting things that I've seen. I'm actually really excited about this. This is super cool, and I love that they're doing this. So, Sequoia is funding open source developers via a new equity-free fellowship. This VC is going to fund 3 developers annually via their open source fellowship, and they don't actually ask for any amount of control or when they say equity free, they're not asking for equity in your open source. They're not asking for any control. They're looking to fund 3 open source developers to work on their open source project and contribute to it, and to fund them fully so that they can just focus on that open source. I actually think that this is super cool, and I'm very excited to see that Sequoia Capital is doing this. I think that this is really, really cool. Oh, there have been a lot of statements about underfunding of open source projects like the security flaw in Log4j and others. And while 3 developers is not going to change the world, if more places took this responsibility, decided to make, teams that were going to do this, we would have better open source. I'm looking at you, Google, AWS, and Microsoft. You could have entire teams doing this, and that would be pretty awesome. I don't know why YouTube is talking about Fortnite. My entire YouTube chat. I have not ignored you. I have read your messages. You are talking about Fortnite. I know. I'm glad you guys are enjoying it, but it is a Fortnite chat over there. My goodness. We are talking about tech news. I don't even know if you guys are actually playing Fortnite or just trolling me. Possibly. We'll see. All right. So, anyways, I'm excited about this. I'm excited about Sequoia funding these open source developers. I think it's really cool. All right. So, System 76 is near releasing the Cosmic Desktop. You guys know that I'm excited about the Cosmic Desktop. I am looking to maybe try using the Cosmic Desktop. I sure hope that it doesn't use gaps by default. If it uses gaps by default, I will be super mad. I want it to do the tiling layout, and you guys know that I hate gaps. Absolutely hate wasting screen real estate. I pay for monitors, not to waste screen real estate. Anyways, I'm excited about trying it out. So we'll probably do a stream where I try it out. Yeah, that's coming out. We already talked about that. This is something that I want, an article that I thought was really cool that you guys should check out. Forgetting the history of Unix is coding us into a corner. I actually, I started programming kind of late in my life. A lot of people in my profession are like, oh yeah, when I was 5, I was building a computer, and like, okay, so I majored in something not chemistry or not software, I worked a job not in software, many jobs, a couple jobs, 2 jobs, okay, 2 jobs, not in software before I moved over in like 2015 2015 to working in software. Okay, so that being said, like I don't have the longest history, and so things like Unix. So I actually read some of these things because I don't know the full history. I haven't been in it, and I have been working that entire time, so I haven't always had the time. So, anyways, I found this article, and the first one in it. I actually found this article first, and then I read the first about forgetting the history of Unix, and I think it's really cool. If you don't know the history of Unix, I would recommend that you read this. And yes, it's news because I just released the article, and I wanted to let you guys know to read it. I wanted you guys to let you guys know to read it. You should read it. Absolutely. If you won, you got to show screenshots. You can't just say you won a round of Fortnite and not post screenshots in Discord. I now know what you guys are doing while I do my news. All right, so we have a bit of random news. We have 2 things. One, which is just a... Is this really news? I don't know if this is news that you guys will care about. I'm going to cover it really quickly. I'm not even sure I care about it. It should have probably been in the deleted, but I already said 2 pieces of news, so I gotta do it. Damn it. Dutch, you're playing Valorant. You get your dead, which is 99% of the time. Perfect. All right. So Microsoft won't let you use the new Outlook app for Windows unless if you have installed Edge on your PC. I want to know your guys' thoughts on this. Because my thought is this. Microsoft's statement here is that it actually leverages Edge for its views. So like how it renders stuff, it's actually using the Edge engine, which you're like, oh, code reuse. But my argument would be is if it's actually leveraging Edge and how it does its web views rendering, then you can just compile that into the application. It's not 1999 where you have to reuse every DLL. We have plenty of hard drive space. Just compile the pieces of Edge that you're using in the app into the app. That's my take on it. But what's your take? Do you like them to save space? Because I'm sure that those parts of Edge probably take up 500 megabytes of disk space. Do you like it to be a smaller application and actually just require you to have Edge installed? Or would you prefer them to do what I would and have them statically link those things into the new application? What are your guys' thoughts? And I think I'm with you, Dutch, where I'm okay with the practice because like you are dynamically linking it. It's like the Windows redistributables that you have to have installed. A lot of people use and leverage those. They're almost making Edge a redistributable. Maybe that's what they should do, though, is make those types of things part of those redistributable packages. It still means you have to have it installed at the end of the day, because if you have 90% of it installed, you have 90% of it installed. I don't know, but just bringing it up. I'd love to hear what you guys think. No. I was saying Edge. I don't know. I don't know that it's 500 megs. I'm just saying, like, would you want to reuse it where you just install Edge? Or would you want to make the email app 500 megs, in theory, larger by statically compiling those bits of Edge that it uses into that? So you basically have the same code duplicated twice. That was my point. I don't know the exact amount of Edge that the new Outlook app uses. All right. And Russell will give us his opinion in 3 more minutes when he figures out the keys. I'm sorry, Russell. I'm sorry. I'm going to be doing the same thing because I want to try Colmac. And when I'm typing Colemak, it's going to be super slow. All right, let's go to the last thing that I saw, Brave Search API. Now, Brave makes a browser, I think, and has for a little while. I think it was the founder of Firefox, actually. I think Brave is built on the Chromium engine, so I think it's a core. But that being said, did you guys know that Brave actually has their own search? They don't do Google search or Bing search. You know, they actually have their own search engine. And something that they're doing that I found really interesting and cool is actually allowing you to use their search via an API. Like, they're actually selling you their API. Now, I don't understand their pricing. I'm going to be real. I actually searched through their pricing and tried to search through this. I don't understand their pricing, but there is a free tier that you can start using. I think that this is really cool, actually. I actually think that this is pretty cool. While I still don't understand, because like CPM is clicks per 1,000, right? But if you're using an API that's not, there's no clicks. People aren't clicking on anything. It's like API requests. Are they meaning like API requests per 1,000 API requests? I don't know, because CPM does not seem like the right metric, because I will guarantee that nobody will ever click. So I'll just use their pro, because no one will ever click on my API query. I am not entirely sure, but this is pretty cool. I'm actually really excited about this because I feel like there's so much that you could do with a clean API for search, and they have several different plans, like data for AI, data for search, data with storage rights, and auto suggest and spell check. I think that these things that they are doing with this is actually really cool. It's a cool service to provide. So, yeah. Anyways, I was kind of excited about this. This is actually, I have been thinking about it. This is something I'd like to do with the Null Cloud, where I provide something unique as a service. Not just like you can run your app or something, but like, I don't know. I've thrown around ideas of like a global lock service or other things like this. That, you know, a global lock service, you should really architect your thing not to need a lock. But if you do, because you have an old system that you're trying to leverage or something like that, something like a global lock service could be interesting or useful. But yeah, a search engine, I don't know. We need to come up with something, some sort of thing that would be useful to developers. Now, this I think is super interesting. I like it. I was up late just thinking of ideas. All right. How's everyone doing? That was it for the news. That was it for the news. Okay, I gotta change it off blue, this hair light, because I almost look like Ninja now. You know, maybe a little bit better looking, but, you know, very similar. And I didn't actually dye my hair. So I'll have to change it. Did anybody else see anything else interesting in the news that I missed or failed to talk about? Well, thanks everyone for joining me. I had a blast bringing you the news today. Please remember to feel free to bring news articles that you think. I know somebody was talking about where Fortnite is hosted. That's an interesting question. I'm assuming that they run on like EC2 instances on Amazon. But I don't know that for sure. Maybe they run in their own data center? Where is Fort? That doesn't help us. They have this, where Fortnite server is located, but that doesn't really help. They could be in their own data centers, like co-located. Ah. They run on AWS. Today, Fortnite runs almost entirely on AWS, including its worldwide game server fleet, backend services, and websites. There you go. All right. Well, I encourage you to read the fifth epoch. Okay, I had 2 links I want you guys to read. Homework for the week. I want to discuss them with people in Discord. So, the fifth epoch of distributed computing, as well as what was the other one that I gave you guys? The Unix one. I'll put it in chat right now. That one. I probably want to chat more about the fifth epoch of distributed computing. I think it's interesting. I think it's an interesting take. I'm not even sure if I agree or disagree with it yet, but I think it's an interesting take. Anyways, feel free to read it. Hit me up on Discord if you like it. And you got to still send me screenshots of you winning Fortnite or Valorant. I want to see those on Discord. All right, thanks, everybody. I'm going to get going. Have yourselves a fantastic next week, and I hope that you all have a really good week and that I can hopefully be a part of it and help make it better. Anyways, I will see you all next week.